Someone said, why is it their confusion about who isn't white when whites are advocating for themselves? I never hear confusion when whites are being demonized. That's a super chat. That's kind of
okay. So let's say like some random crazy progressive like neoliberal Silicon Valley writer or whatever talking shit about white people. Of course, they're not going to make the distinction because they don't view race as this sort of as a sort of inherent biological thing with this sort of spiritual attachment to some homeland. They're talking about it from a social construct perspective. They see it as, okay, if you're pale skinned, you're white passing, and therefore you're considered white, or something along the lines of that. And I think to an extent that isn't going to be adequate for ethno-nationalists. There seems to be a lot more. It seems to be a lot more complicated for an ethno-nationalist group to start arguing for white people, because white passing isn't good enough for a lot of white nationalists. So for example, let's say a guy is half Egyptian. Hello, Braving Ruin. He did this Reddit post over a year ago, about a year and a half ago now, and he talks about he's half Egyptian. So his dad is an Egyptian immigrant, but he considers himself white. Is he allowed in the ethno state? He's only 50% white.
Really? Is this true?
Is that a direct question or a rhetorical question?
Well, it is a direct question. He's as white as Obama. But he wants to be in the ethno state. He wants to be in the ethno state.
It's an interesting person. I actually have been asked this question before. I think it was actually asked by a half Asian person, Graham Wood. I think a roaming millennial might have asked me a similar question. Look, so long as the vast majority of the population is core European and that the state is geared towards our future, if there are on the edges are someone who's half Asian or half Egyptian, and they genuinely want to be part of this community, they understand themselves as part of a European story, this just is not a big deal, to be honest. I think you guys are inflating some of these like kind of minor questions, or claiming that there's all, they're all this anti-Irish animus and and white supremacists or white nationalists or whatever. I mean, look, you're kind of inflating these small disputes into things that are deal breakers. They're not. Let me add one thing also real quick to that super chat comment about when whites are being demonized, no one questions, like, are they white enough? Oh, we want to demonize these people, an entire race, but are all of them white enough? We're not sure. No, they never say that. But also, no one ever questions whether anyone involved with Black Lives Matter is black enough or something like that. And actually, maybe they should. There are actually many cases of a kind of mulatto-tocracy on top of the black civil rights infrastructure and black nationalism, but the kind of Ben jealous type of the NAACP. These people seem to be 75% white, to be honest. And these are the high IQ elite, the talented 10th of the civil rights infrastructure. No one questions whether they're black enough, and maybe they should. But again, it's all of these questions about whether the white race really exists, or some of these marginal groups, someone living in Turkey who's of Austrian heritage, is he white? All of these just seem to be exceptional marginal cases, and to focus in on them as deal breakers is just an act of deflection.
I just wanted to make a quick comment about this, the whole Braving Ruin question, if you will.
Yeah, please.
And my reasoning for the views that I have, the reason I support the alt-right is not in spite of my ancestry, it's because of my ancestry. Because Coptic people in Egypt are a tiny minority of the population who are ruled over by a hostile majority that essentially hates them and treats them as second class and victimizes them all the time, targets them with violence. And, Mr. Sherratt conceded in this conversation that is the projected future of white people in Western countries is the political disenfranchisement of them, the continuation of a hateful narrative against them, the dispossession of white people in the West. And so if that exact situation has already happened to one part of my ancestry, why would I sit back and just quietly allow it to happen to another part of my ancestry? How can I not care about that if I've already seen it happen somewhere else and I see how horrific it is? That's my reasoning for why I support nationalism, is because I think, I don't think that that's an acceptable thing to happen to any group of people anywhere.
Mm-hmm. And what specifically, I sort of forget exactly how he said it, but can you address exactly what David was saying about you? He was saying you're about the same skin tone as Obama, and you wouldn't be.
Well, no, I'm certainly not the same skin tone as Obama. I'm very light skinned, and so my life experience is that of the white American. When I meet people from different groups in real life, white people, black people, Asians, Latinos, Arabs, whoever, and even Coptic people have met me and said, "You just look white to me." So I don't really, as far as where I feel like I belong or where I feel like I fit in, my upbringing was largely around, it's the, waspy, middle class, suburban white upbringing of the white American. So I don't really, if a Coptic person doesn't even recognize me as one of them, I don't really see how I can fit in with them. There's really, I think, only about 50,000 of them in the United States. So it's rare that you run across one of them. So, it's a matter of where I think my interests lie and where my sense of belonging is, and that's why I have chosen this side of the fight.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a great point. In my personal opinion, I think I don't need things to be 1,000,000% like pure blood Aryan or something. I'm not.
You're a cuck. You're a cuck.
100%.
No one is
101%.
And I think Richard made the point earlier. It's like we want people who want to embrace these ideas, and I don't think every single person obviously has to be white. That's my opinion, because like we said before, there are some white people who have some terrible opinions, and there's some non-whites who have some great opinions.
The thing about it is, though, I think this set of beliefs can bring people together. Not to sound like a civ nat cuck, but like what we're advocating for is in everyone's best interest, right? Diversity causing conflict and causing violence and causing these social issues. That's true, and you would think that no one would want to be a part of these social issues. No one wants to have this social strife in their country. And this is true even for countries that don't involve whites. I mean, you can look at some of the issues in Southeast Asia, for example, and you see the clashes between some of the more the different ethnic groups that inhabit the same countries in Southeast Asia. You can see it in the Middle East. Diversity causes conflict everywhere, and enabling people to advocate for their own interests and have their own country is beneficial for all of these people, because then they are not around these conflicts.
Yeah, I mean, look at Singapore. Singapore is often held up as this example of a multi-ethnic democracy, but the reality is one, it's like 75% Chinese, and two, it's an authoritarian state to keep all these different groups from being at each other's throats. Lee Kuan Yew has said so much himself that it's not a Western form of democracy. It's a very compartmentalized kind of democracy, where you don't have the ability for one demographic to rule over the other too much, because if you did, then you would have all kinds of clashes between these different groups. So diversity isn't just a problem for white people; it's a problem for any group. I mean, look at Indians and Pakistanis. They're very genetically similar, but try to convince them that they're the same. Try to convince them that they should just get along. You can't do it.